What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Awesemo channel, talking some college basketball DFS ahead of February the 23rd. It is a Wednesday. We have 12 games up, 12 games down to get into. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you today by Monkey Knife Fight as the title sponsor. Make sure to check them out. A lot of deals over there when you sign up. And here we go, taking you behind the glass, taking a look at our data tools. We won't spend too much time on some of these bad games, and this is a first look. Projections are not finished yet. We'll be looking at injuries as we go through this slate, so just know this is not a final answer for any of these teams, but we'll try to dive into it best we can with what we have to work with. The first game on deck is going to be Mississippi State taking on South Carolina. Total at 139, 2-point spread in favor of Mississippi State. Not the best game environment for DFS overall. And both these teams run pretty deep rotations. For South Carolina, you're going to see a lot of Eric Stevenson, James Reese, Devin Carter, Cuisinart, Bryant, even players like Leveque and Taquan Woodley. They've been involved a lot recently. So this typically isn't a spot where I want to take a look at South Carolina, especially considering they changed their rotation on the drop of a dime. That's going to be difficult to target too. Not to mention Mississippi State playing fairly good defense, as is South Carolina. On the Mississippi State side, Iverson Molinar has been pretty good. 21% shot rate last three. Garrison Brooks, he's been playing a lot of minutes, but again, their bench is pretty deep here. I think both of them are pretty good bets for over 30. Molinar's one player that could reach like a 35 potentially. DJ Jeffries battled foul trouble in their last game, just 20 minutes for him. He's usually playing a lot more. But we have seen Tolu Smith return from injury. So that kind of muddies the waters here a little bit as well. Tolu Smith, 30 minutes in their last game. But ultimately, this is not my favorite spot for DFS, given the strength of the defenses and the deep rotation. So we won't spend too much time here. Game number 2 is Creighton taking on St. John's. This is a much better game environment overall. St. John's plays with an incredibly fast tempo. They're at 76.4 possessions per game. They're the 4.5-point favorites, with the total sitting at 147.5. For DFS purposes, there are some injuries to monitor here. We saw Alex O'Connell get hurt really late in their last game, and Kaluma hasn't played in multiple games. So there are injuries to watch. On the Creighton side in particular, St. John's actually getting a little healthier from injury. Posh missed a couple games there towards the beginning of the month, but he's now back. He's back starting, and he's playing a lot of minutes. So I think Posh has basically returned to his normal role, and he has a ceiling for 30-plus minutes, 30 minutes around there. For DFS purposes, you're going to get basically full minutes out of Hawkins, AOC if he plays, Kalkbrenner, and Nembhard. Even a guy like Trey Alexander, who battled foul troubles in the 2 previous games, finally jumped up to 37 minutes in their most recent contest. And usage is so condensed between them. I think Hawkins is clearly the usage leader with his 25% shot rate, 31% rebound rate, 19% assist rate last 3. But AOC is going to be a shooter if he's healthy. Kalkbrenner soaks up a lot of rebounds. And Trey Alexander is the cheapest piece here for Creighton that I'm willing to get to. Good team totals on both sides, so comfortable with both. If we see AOC miss this game, Radi Andronkalashvili should step in and receive most of the minutes for him. On St. John's, rotation's a little deeper here, but we know Posh and Champagny are going to play almost every minute. Champagny's dominating usage, near 30% shot rate last 3. That should drop a little bit with Posh back, but still incredible rates. Posh at 7,700, he's going to be your GPP pivot. Again, rates just don't indicate the role he's been playing all year. Then we've seen kind of a rotation between the next 4 or 5 players. Aaron Wheeler, Dylan Adai-Wusu, Montez Mathis, Joel Soriano, all playing mid-20s in minutes. I'm typically just trying to pay down if I'm getting any of these guys, which looks like Montez Mathis is the cheapest worth considering here. But again, a lot of volatility for all of them. I think Soriano's decent for his rebound rate, but ultimately I'm probably just trying to pay up for Posh and Champagny and then using the cheap players on the Creighton side instead of St. John's. Game number 3, we have Syracuse taking on Notre Dame. 145.5 total here. So a very solid total, Notre Dame being the favorite. This is a spot where we have 2 elite offenses and 2 pretty poor defenses. Syracuse in particular is 253rd in defensive efficiency. Notre Dame sitting at 163rd, so they're not spectacular either. And we have condensed rotations on both sides. For Syracuse, we saw Jesse Edwards go down with injury, and most of those minutes have gone right to Frank Anselm. The only time Frank Anselem hasn't reached full minutes has been because of foul trouble, which he does struggle a lot with. Fouled out of their last game. Only played 19 minutes in the previous because he sustained 3 fouls pretty early. So Frank Anselem, he's going to be your cheap play for Syracuse. Phenomenal rebounding rate, but he doesn't really do anything else. Still, he's cheap enough to consider. From there, most of the usage is being sucked up by Cole Swider, who actually has a 20.4% shot rate, 23% rebound rate last 3, and even a 14% assist rate. Jimmy Boeheim's also been extremely involved too. So you can see a lot of the usage that Edwards vacated has gone to Boeheim, Jimmy Boeheim, that is, and Swider. Buddy Boeheim, he's shooting the ball a ton recently, but he's not doing a ton else. Gerard is basically the same kind of player. He's a decent assist rate, but again, I think you can save some salary off Buddy by going down to Jimmy or Cole Swider here. For Notre Dame, their rotation is basically back intact after Nate Laszewski was out for a game or two there. He played 29 and 33 minutes in back-to-back games. We know where the minutes are going for this Notre Dame team, but the usage has been pretty spread across the board. Blake Wesley, the freshman, has a 25% shot rate last 3. That's fantastic. He's involved in the periphery as well, if you can get him. I think there's better plays in the expensive range, but maybe you take a look. From there, the usage is kind of spread out. Cormac Ryan is the guy that's played at least 34 minutes in 3 straight games. He has a 13% shot rate, 15% rebound rate, 17.5% assist rate. So maybe you could get to him as a cheap piece. There's a chance Laszewski just takes up more usage after he was out again. So I think maybe I would rather just pay down. Prentice Hub is going to see a lot of minutes here as well. 39, 39, and 34 last 3 games. So that's going to give you more of a floor than a ceiling here, more than likely. So there are pieces on Notre Dame I'm interested in. Basically, any of Blake Wesley, Prentice Hub, Nate Laszewski, and Cormac Ryan, I think, are considerations. I don't know if I'm trying to get to any of them on a main team, though. Next game, we have Duke taking on Virginia. This is a spot where Duke is a 4.5-point favorite, trying to avenge their loss from earlier this year. 130 total, which is on the decline. Duke is a substantial favorite here for a reason. Number 5, offensive efficiency. Number 34, defensive efficiency. Virginia is 110th in offensive efficiency, 126th on defense. For the Duke Blue Devils, Banchero has been playing a massive role for this team. 8,700 is a lot to pay for this particular game environment. So I think I'm probably not going to play anybody on Duke, even though Banchero has at least a 20% shot rate, rebound rate, and assist rate. Just with a 67.25 implied team total, there's places that I would rather get more. The same goes for Wendell Moore, who's just not used at the same rate he was earlier in the year. Trevor Keels, his price is now back up after he missed a couple games in there, but he'll play nearly every minute, 35, 34 minutes per game over the last 2. Mark Williams doesn't have a minute floor, but if he does ever get 25, he's an absolute monster. And the same kind of goes for AJ Griffin, 6,300. I'm probably just staying away from Duke. Virginia is always going to be the same thing. It's hard to get to any Virginia players on big slates. Jaden Gardner has elite usage, over a 30% shot rate and rebound rate, but they just don't have as many possessions as other teams. And from there, I'm probably not playing anyone else. Everyone is above 6K for the most part outside of Armand Franklin, who only played 16 minutes in their last game. So I'm probably just staying away from this game as a whole. Xavier taking on Providence. This is an interesting spot here. Providence has been a team I've been kind of trying to sell high on recently. I'm not sure if this is the spot, though. As far as injuries go, we saw Al Durham and Nate Johnson miss the last game for each of these respective teams. Providence still able to somehow overcome that deficit against Butler and win. Xavier, they've been a bit of a disappointment this year, Nate Johnson included. He's a guy that shot much better from 3 last year. Now he's just been kind of mediocre overall. But first of all, Nate Johnson being out does kind of condense minutes even more than they had in the past. Nunji, Scruggs, Colby Jones, and Zach Freemantle are going to play nearly every single minute. Freemantle in particular has awesome rates last 3, played at least 34 minutes, 3 straight, at least a 19% rebound rate, 19% shot rate, 27% rebound rate last 3. Nunji's been also extremely involved. He's over 22% shot rate, rebound rate. Scruggs and Colby Jones have kind of been the victims of this. More peripheral players of late, just with so much of that usage coming through Nunji and Freemantle. I think if you want some punt plays, Dwam Odom or Kunkel are both potential options. I wish they would just condense minutes between the two, but those two are basically going to split 50-50. Probably just paying down for Kunkel if I'm playing one of them, but not a great game environment for Xavier. Again, they're 2.5-point underdogs. The total here is 138.5, which is not a great environment. For Providence, we did see the usage get condensed without Durham. He's questionable here, so we'll have to monitor both him and Nate Johnson leading up to lock. But if Durham misses, you should see nearly every single minute for Bynum and AJ Reeves and Mania. Horkler and Nate Watson are also going to play like every single minute. They're not going to rotate much if Durham sits. If Durham plays, the minute floor for all these guys drops a little bit, but you're still likely seeing above 30 for most, with the exception of Reeves. So if I'm trying to play any of these guys, I honestly think they're a little too expensive for the game environment, but Bynum is somebody who now has a 24.3% shot rate last three, plays every minute. And he has a pretty good assist rate. It's up to 42% over the last three. So he's probably the main player I would look at. Maybe Nate Watson in GPPs, but he's got a really tough matchup against the interior of Xavier. So I think it'll be just Bynum or move on for me. Maybe a Mania for the floor he gives you, but even that, a little bit risky here. TCU taking on Texas, easy fade of a game overall. Rotations are just too deep for both teams. 9-point spread in favor of Texas, 127.5 total. Just a complete disaster for everyone on TCU. Anytime I see implied team totals outside of the top 60 points, outside of 60 points, just auto fades for me. If you're playing anybody, it's probably just stud Mike Miles. On Texas, the rotation is still pretty wide, even with Trey Mitchell out. I think maybe you take a stab on a Christian Bishop. Maybe you take a stab on a Courtney Ramey. He's played 37 minutes in the last game. I mean, Timmy Allen was in foul trouble, so we have to put that into consideration. But Marcus Carr's played terribly of late. I wouldn't be surprised to see him lose minutes for players like Andrew Jones and Courtney Ramey. They're cheap enough to take stabs on, but the ceiling's just not there in this terrible game environment. Wake Forest taking on Clemson. Pretty good game environment overall. 144.5 total, 2.5-point spread in favor of Wake. Wake plays extremely fast. Clemson's a little below average in terms of pace, but Wake has a couple of premier studs in Alondas Williams and Jake LaRavia. Alondas is potential ACC player of the year. He's shooting the ball at a 28% clip, rebounding at a 16% clip, and assisting at a 26% clip. Alondas Williams is maybe the most involved player in all of college basketball. He's 9,100 here, which is cheaper than we've seen him in recent games. His floor is just so solid that he's going to be a target on every slate. LaRavia has dealt with foul trouble at times, but he's also extremely involved. The shot rate has fallen a little bit for him, but a 23.5% rebound rate, 21% assist rate. He is triple-double upside legitimately, and that's not something we can say about a lot of players in college. From there, I'm probably not trying to play anybody else. The minutes are just split too consistently between Williamson, Mucius, Walton, Sy. Not really interested in anyone else. Clemson, they do have a usage monster in PJ Hall. He's taking a ton of shots. It's just this team is so bad, and we need to talk about the health for some of these players. So Hunter Tyson's already out for sure. PJ Hall only played 1 minute in their last game. They're calling him questionable, but this guy had to go under x-rays for his foot. They came back negative. I just don't see how he plays at all in this game. Getting x-rays and coming back negative is a positive, but I mean, could only play 1 minute, had to get x-rays to begin with. That's not a good sign for PJ Hall. I expect him to miss this game. So that condenses minutes a little further. You have Alamir Dawes, not good. Usage rate just 14% for him. David Collins, 13% usage rate. He's more of a peripheral player. Naz Bohannon's played a ton for Hunter Tyson. He's basically just a rebounder, doesn't shoot the ball a ton. And now you have players like Chase Hunter playing a lot of minutes. I mean, they had to play Ian Scheifelen 26 minutes in the last game. I think if you're punting with any of these guys, it's probably a Chase Hunter, who is a pretty decent peripheral player. But I even wish he was a little cheaper in this spot. You're not getting a huge discount with guys like Chase Hunter. And I think this is a spot where maybe they use multiple players to try to replace PJ Hall. But I already bet Wake Forest in this game. The spread has moved a point in favor of Wake Forest, and I expect it to continue moving today. I'll be trying to hammer Alondas and some of the Wake guys. Next game is West Virginia taking on Iowa State. A 132 total 5-point spread in favor of the Cyclones. Not a very friendly DFS environment. Both teams great on defense. Iowa State 10th in defensive efficiency, West Virginia 88th. There are basically two players that see most of the minutes for West Virginia, Taz Sherman and Sean McNeil. Even though Sean McNeil's been below 30 minutes in 2 of the last 3, that is concerning for him. Taz has a 28% shot rate, so he can always fill the box score if he's on with his shooting percentages, but still, it's been pretty up and down for him. The other two players that get somewhat consistent minutes for West Virginia are Jalen Bridges and Kadarian Johnson. Both aren't very used and are a little bit expensive for this game environment. For Iowa State, Isaiah Brockington is playing every single minute and just stuffing the box score with stats. 29% shot rate, 19% rebound rate, 10% assist rate, last 3 plays every minute. Tyrese Hunter is like a discount version of him. Very involved everywhere as well, just not quite the same shot rate. I'd rather play Hunter at a cheaper price than Brockington. Just don't want to pay $7.4K for players in this bad game environment. Kalsher is the guy that will play around 30 minutes. He's just basically a pure shooter. And with Brockington and Hunter taking so much of the usage, I'm not sure you can get to him. Kuntz is somebody that'll play consistently across the board in terms of his rates, but really low floor for him, with just so much usage going to the studs. Not playing anyone in this game. Rutgers taking on Michigan. First game, Michigan without Juwan Howard, without Diabate, so we will have to work through some of those. Michigan still a 5.5-point favorite, 135 total, which is not the most enticing on the board, but I think we could still talk about some pieces because of the condensed rotation. Rutgers fully healthy. They're coming off a loss. I mean, basically with Rutgers, it's the same deal every time. Do we want to target Ron Harper, who has pretty good rates, but usually he's somebody that projects a little worse than some of the other studs, and this is not a good game environment for Harper. I'm probably staying away. Geo Baker plays every single minute. Decent shot rate at 20%, 22% assist rate. He's somebody I'm sometimes willing to pay down for, but probably not here. Last game, Paul McCahey and Caleb McConnell fouled out, so I don't think we got full minutes from either of them. McConnell, he's like a player that was at 4K at times this year. Now he's up to 6K. Tough to get to any of these guys. All 5 of the starters on Rutgers are above 6K. With a sub 65 implied team total, it's just a stay away spot. On Michigan, there's not really any alternative to Hunter Dickinson playing every minute now. Diabate is not going to be playing in the game. I don't really think you get substantial minutes from Brandon Johns, Terrence Williams. I think that is going to continue to be a rotation. So Dickinson, unless he fouls out, doesn't really have any alternative to playing 35 minutes plus. I think you could certainly target him in this spot. Outside of that, Eli Brooks, Devontae Jones, and Caleb Houston are going to play every minute. It's a tough spot overall. Only Houston is cheap. With that said, Houston actually has decent rates, 13.5% shot rate, 14% rebound rate. There's a chance he gets elevated minutes without Diabate. They just don't have a ton of players they're willing to use an extended run here. So I think Houston plays probably 35 minutes here. As a cheaper play, I'm okay with it. Eli Brooks has pretty good rates, but ultimately, if I'm playing anyone in the game, it's going to be a priority towards Dickinson, who's just been a monster late. Over 20% shot rate and rebound rate last 3. And again, I don't think they have any alternative to playing him every single minute. Ole Miss taking on Auburn, one of the few blowout risks on the slate. So that is a concern here for those of you backing Auburn, but obviously Auburn had the loss this weekend. It's a spot where prime bounce back spot against an Ole Miss team, which is just in complete shambles. Ruffin is out. Allen is out. Morrell is questionable. Joyner is questionable. Who's even going to play for this Ole Miss team? A team that's not great even when they're fully healthy. If these players are out, you have some premier value potential here, like in Austin Crowley at 4,200. He played 36 minutes in the last game. Luis Rodriguez at 5,200. He's going to play 30 minutes regardless, I think, but in the last 2, he's played 37, 39. They're just running out of options. Ty Fagan had to play 38 minutes. Jamin Brakefield had to play 31 minutes. There's just going to be 3 or 4 players on this team below 5K that hit 35 minutes if Morrell and Joyner miss the game, which we'll have to watch ahead of time. But even if they play, there's a chance they're just straight up banged up here. And a 16-point underdogs against Auburn, I'm not sure there's any rush to get these guys back in what is amounting to a lost season for Ole Miss. On the Auburn side, again, they're coming off the loss. So, again, they're at home. That's where they play best. I think you could play some of these guys. They are down in price now. Jabari at 75. That's a spot where you could take advantage of the 21% shot rate. He's a good rebounder too, good in the periphery. KD Johnson, more of a peripheral player himself. Wendell Green has played well of late. Again, mainly a peripheral player, but I think he's in play at 6,900. Kessler, I do not believe sees full minutes here. He typically isn't playing 30 plus unless it's a complete up and down, back and forth affair. And even then, he's a risk of fouling. Kessler always has the immense block ceiling. So if you want to chase the blocks, nobody's better in the country with Kessler. But I think there are alternatives on the slate I would rather get to that are more consistent. mainly like an Alondis Williams. And then in the periphery, you have other players like Flanagan has been a guy we've chased at times this year, probably not getting there with Flanagan. So for me, it's going to be a priority towards like a Jabari Smith if I'm playing anyone on Auburn, but the blowout risk is a little concerning for me. On Ole Miss, love the value plays, just need to wait before lock to see which ones are actually unlocked here. But I'm expecting some guards to open up like Ty Fig and Luis Rodriguez, maybe some plays there. Butler taking on Seton Hall. Low total at 132. Butler, 9.5-point underdog here. We've seen Bo Hodges banged up a lot recently, but his first came back from injury. He played just 37 minutes. So Bo Hodges has phenomenal rates when he's on the floor. It's just you don't see him a lot. He's hurt so often. I actually bet Butler in this game, so I think they do keep it somewhat close, but the overall total in the game leaves a ton to be desired. Chuck Harris is a guy that's going to throw up a lot of shots. I think he's fine to potentially target. Aaron Thompson, more of a peripheral player. I'm a little worried about the usage for both of them, just with Bo Hodges coming back and soaking up so much himself. Bryce Enzi is a potential play as well. He's another guy that's been banged up, and his minutes have really suffered since the injury. So Butler will play a deep rotation. It's Bo Hodges or bust for me on this team. Seton Hall, Bryce Aikens, I have no idea when he's coming back. Not anytime soon. They're going to run a rotation of 8 players, which kind of sucks, but I think there are some we can get to. Roden is one of these players I think that's a GPP consideration because he has a 24% shot rate, 26% rebound rate last 3. Kadari is going to run point, tons of assist upside. He will shoot whenever possible. And I'm probably not playing anyone else. They're just split so cleanly in terms of their minutes and rates where I don't want to get too much Seton Hall. But Kadari and Roden, I think, are outside considerations. Last game we have here on the main slate is Houston taking on Tulane. Houston has faltered a little bit of late. I've heard some people talk about their depth being a concern, which I do agree with. You know, like losing Sasser and Mark early in the year certainly hurt this team's depth, and they've played essentially these 4 studs, Edwards, White, Seton, Taze Moore every single minute. So they're not going to have fresh legs hitting the tournament, and we've seen them lose a step a little bit towards the end of the year. They're still 9-point favorites here with a 73 implied team total. So I'm definitely going to be targeting some Houston. Taze Moore has phenomenal rates on the year. He just fouled out of their most recent game, explaining the 24 minutes. Shed is a guy who has a 21% shot rate last 3, very good assist rate. Fabian White, he's going to be consistent across the board, not as involved of late, but we know the rebound upside is there with Fabian White. Even Josh Carlton played 39 minutes in the last game. I think a lot of that having to do with Taze just hitting the bench, but Carlton, he's a guy that has struggled with fouls at times too, but he's played a consistent role. And then Kyler Edwards, my favorite play of the entire group. He is the best usage rate on the year, and he's a guy that has a 21% shot rate, 22% rebound rate, and 27.5% assist rate last 3. He has better rates than anyone else on the year and last 3. There's just no reason he should be cheaper than both Fabian and Shed here. So I'm going to hit Kyler Edwards or Taze Moore for this Houston team. Tulane, not as much interest here. You have fairly consistent minutes between Jalen Cook, Jalen Forbes, Kevin Cross, and Sion James. But there's not really much to like here on a team with an implied team total below 70. Sion James is cheap, but he doesn't shoot a lot. He basically gets there with rebounds and assists. So you're going to need an outlier shooting performance. And then the other 3 guys, Cross, Forbes, and Cook, all have shot rates north of 20%, but they kind of cannibalize each other. If I'm playing any of them, it's going to be Cross just for his consistency across the board. But again, bad matchup against an elite Houston defense. And that is going to do it for us today with the DFS breakdown. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know in the comment section who your favorite plays are. Planning to do these before the big slates every single week leading up to March Madness, when we'll have a lot more offerings, so make sure to check those out. I'm Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you again next time.